Good morning, everybody, and thank you for that. I just bring the CV up to date. I'm no longer at FinCap. I left there about a year ago now to focus on the non-exec world, and I am now Executive Chairman of Roxi. Apologies to start with. I think looking at the programme, you would have expected to see me accompanied by Mr. Zhang, our Chief Operating Officer. Unfortunately, he is in Almaty at the moment, finalising well location discussions with our new partner, KNOC, the Korean National Oil Company. And I think that is something that is probably more important in terms of the ultimate share price than being here. As a result of that, the presentation I'm going to make today is going to be non-technical. There are plenty of technical slides and examples of what we've done on our website. Mr. Zhang will be back with myself, and we'll be doing a round of city visits in early October. So to the extent that is something that you would like to take up, having listened to the rest of this presentation, please let me know and we'll arrange that. Alternatively, his contact details are at the back of the presentation. But the focus on this presentation is very much trying to make the investment case and bring people up to date with where Roxi has been and, more importantly, where it is going. I'm certainly convinced now that Roxi has got itself to a position where the current share price is more than covered by our existing production. We have announced over the past few months production successes in the 3 wells on our Galaz field. It hasn't had a dramatic impact on the price, but I think in any analysis, and the one that I focus on is the one that was done by our new brokers, WH Ireland, as put out with our results a few months ago, the current share price is, to my mind, certainly more than covered there. We're about to embark on a very exciting deep drilling programme with our new partners, KNOC, as soon as the Kazakh state has ratified that deal, which I'm expecting in days rather than weeks. And as we go through the presentation, then hopefully you will come to agree with me or not that the valuation in the market at the moment reflects really just what's going on at Galaz with plenty of upside. I think the other point to make is that historically we've not been a particularly promotional company. The last time we actually said anything publicly was about 3 or 4 years ago at the Oilbarrel. We haven't really made much of a thing about going and seeing investors, as we've been concentrating on actually having something to talk about. I think the production that we have and the opportunities we've got with this deep drilling means that now we do need to make more of a case, and that's certainly going to be a large part of my job. I've already started going around and seeing potential investors and existing holders, and I think as part of that process, allied to the very strong news flow that's been happening and is going to continue to happen once we get our hands on the 25 million to carry on the deep drilling at BNG, should mean there'll be a lot of news in the marketplace, which normally promotes share price movements. To the extent people want to talk to me at different times, all my contact details are at the back. I'm very happy to talk, come and see, speak and arrange meetings either with the technical side or on one-on-ones. So we'll take that as read. An overview. We've been operating in Kazakhstan since 2006. We came together towards the end of 2006. Floated in 2007, May 2007, we raised just about $80 million as a placing. We started off with 2 main assets with an option over the third. In 2008, we acquired another 3 assets through a reverse takeover, a company called Aragon. And then we're progressing those assets as we go through. I think the progress of our exploration has been slow. And I think it's been slow for a couple of reasons. One is we had, as many companies would have done, funding issues after 2008. And for a while we tried to deal with that through raising cash from financial investors. But from 2009 onwards, the bulk of the cash we've raised has been from farm-out partners. And I think we have concluded in that time 4 separate farm-out agreements. And these things are typically taking a year from start to finish in terms of the identification of the partner, the due diligence, and then getting the thing through the authorities. And that has most certainly made a difference to the timing on the development of the exploration program. I think the other thing which has happened is that during that period there's been a fairly major overhaul in terms of the regulatory status in Kazakhstan. Now, that's something that now we see as a competitive advantage, that we understand how that works and therefore can attract some of these very large farming partners to work with us in developing assets that possibly they might do otherwise on their own. So where we stand at the moment is that we have 3 assets that are either in production or very close to production. The first of those that we'll talk about is actually producing 700 barrels a day as we speak, and we have 34% interest in that. We expect to become cash generative on our current plans in 2014. Obviously, plans depend on drilling success and other things, but certainly I think that would mark a major step forward in terms of a company that's been always spending money on production rather than on exploration, to actually be in receipt of significant sums. For the two main assets, we've got our licenses in place. They come up for renewal next summer. The funding is in place to do the work that we need to do to maintain those licenses, and we're confident that will happen. I'll go through that in a bit more detail. I think the biggest demonstration to us, and hopefully to third parties, in terms of the quality of our assets and their potential, is the quality of the farm-out partners that we have found. The first of those is LGI, the Korean multinational, probably more famous for making TV sets, but they have a very large oil and gas division. And our Chief Operating Officer is a former Vice President of that division. And then more recently, KNOC, state company, very big operator in the region, who has evaluated our BNG asset and has decided to joint venture with us on that. The 25 million that will be coming from KNOC will fund the exciting work at BNG over the next 6 months. Focus is Kazakhstan. It's not to say it's only ever going to be our focus, but certainly for the foreseeable future we are based and looking just at Kazakh assets. All our staff work from the one office in Kazakhstan, all but one of them, which is Mr. Jang, who is a Korean national, are Kazakhs. That is our focus, and that is an area that we understand. Going through some of the statistics on Kazakhstan, it's already got the 9th largest proven reserves there, and the expectation is within a few years it's going to be a top 10 producer. I think the chart at the bottom shows both existing production and expected production, and that is something that's going to make it a major focus. I think the focus of the big discoveries seem to be in the pre-Caspian basin, where all but one of our assets is located, and we are quite close to major discoveries in that region. We'll come on to that. As a result of the size of the reserves and the fact they're into very large-scale production, the infrastructure is already good and is increasing. I think there are very significant pipelines being built now flowing to the east as well as the west, and we will benefit from that, as well as the very skilled workforce that is there, particularly the younger Kazakhs in the office. The country has a stable political environment, which is obviously important. I think it's usually referred to as the most stable of the stans, and certainly we have not encountered any issues with the political situation. And I think the regulatory system, it's not easy, but it's workable, and I think it is a competitive advantage that we have in attracting investment from multinationals, that we have people who understand how the system works and have a good track record of getting these deals through the system. I was just going to cover the two different types of licenses before going on to the assets. All but one of our licenses are pilot production licenses, and these are awarded on the basis that if we do what we and the state agree that we need to do in terms of a work programme, that we can, 2 years down the line, go and reapply for our licence and agree a new work programme, and it will be awarded. So for the two main assets, we have the Galez and BNG. Both of those come up in the summer. Pleased to say that we are on track to both fund and complete the work that will mean those two will be renewed, so we're confident that can happen. One of the issues with pilot production is that any pilot production licenses, that any production is sold at domestic prices, which is typically at the moment around the $40 level. So that is a downside there. The other type of license, and we have one of these at our Moon Ali asset, is a full production license where production can be sold at whatever you can get on the international market. It is a 15-year license that we have there. I noted just down the tax there. Tax system has changed in the not too distant future, and tax is broadly now calculated on the basis of profitability rather than anything else. Most of the investment we've made over the years, and certainly that's in excess of $100 million, has been put in by way of loan. So those loan repayments will come out and will not be taxed. Then also we have significant tax losses. So going forward, we are not anticipating to be a significant taxpayer for quite some time. Turning to the first of the two main assets that we have now, this one is in central Kazakhstan, so this is the one that is not near the Caspian Sea. We bought part of this with the Aragon acquisition in 2008, and it's this part here, if it works. Don't know if it does. Well, it's the bit at the top left there with the yellow and the green, and that is the area that we have been developing. In 2011, we extended it with the orangey-brown section there, northwest Kunes, and that's something that has added to the area. We haven't done a great deal of work on that so far, but that is something that we will be putting work programs in when we reapply for the licence in the middle of next year. Our interest at Galaz is 34%, although, as I said before, most of our cash has gone in there by way of loans, so the loan repayments will come out probably in a preferential rate to the 34% after the loan repayments that some of the loans that LGI have put in. LGI have agreed to contribute 50 million to this asset. They obviously saw there was something of value there. That is partly an assignment of some loans that other people had and partly taking on percentages that other people had. But certainly I think in them we recognise we've been in the hands of a very strong operator, and they've become the operator when they got involved. We have, before them and with their assistance, gathered a decent amount of seismic over the top portion that we've had for a while. But most importantly, we've got 3 wells that are producing, NK6, NK7 and NK8 there. And in aggregate, they're certainly producing at the moment at over 700 barrels a day. There are more wells being drilled. These are not particularly expensive wells to drill. I think they're about $1.5 million ago. It's about 1,300 metres there. So we would certainly expect in the area where NK6, NK7 and NK8, which is at the top of that small green block there, that we'll be able to get additional wells there to increase the production. And that, we believe, will actually make the valuation of this asset certainly greater than the valuation of the company as a whole using the market price. In terms of the reserves, these are quite old. Our intention, although we have to discuss this with our partner, is to commission McDaniels, who are the experts here, to go and look at the reserves again sometime in the next 6 months to see if we can put out a higher reserve statement, because obviously that would have an impact on the share price. Now, clearly that's something that suits us. It's not particularly important to LGI there, so we have to be in discussions in terms of allocating part of the budget to do that. So Galaz is a winner, has a decent value, and certainly I think underpins the current valuation of the company. The excitement going forward, though, is very much on B&G. Again, we acquired this in 2008 as part of the Eragon acquisition. This one is located in the Caspian region. In terms of the size, it's about the size of the M25, the land inside the M25 there, so it's a good chunk. We have the rights over the bits in the red dotted line. And it has been a producing field in the past, certainly in Soviet times. The records are not always easy to get or that reliable. Certainly that area has produced oil in the past. Encouragingly, the areas that are marked in green on the edge of the red lines there are owned by other people, but are actually producing or have produced recently. The one that is thought to be the most similar in terms of a structure is the Tolkien field, middle way down on the left-hand side. And that is thought to have a lot of similarities to the sites that we're discussing now with KNOC to drill in the deeper horizons. We've got 3D seismic over virtually all this area, and that has been a very time-consuming and expensive exercise. So certainly we're in a very strong position to progress this asset, and that made all the difference in terms of when we were conducting the farm-out discussions with KNOC. For people that have followed the company for a few years, you may recall this is one that we had originally done a farm-out deal with Kannemans back in 2009, 2010. They agreed to put up 57 million, including a 7 million signing fee. They pumped in about 45 million before they themselves decided they were not interested in continuing in Kazakhstan or, I think, anywhere else. So we bought that back from them and have started again there. So a lot of the money that Kannemans contributed went into the 3D seismic gathering. In terms of the drilling we've done to date, the drilling we did with Kannemans' money was really shallow drilling at the South Yelemis field at the top right-hand side there, because the rationale that they had, and we had as a company without huge pots of cash, was that we needed to do something that was economic sooner rather than later. So that is relatively shallow drilling. We've got 2 or 3 wells there that would be capable of production. But we need to discuss with our new partners, KNOC, once the deal has been ratified, whether that is the prime interest or whether, as a much better funded company, their interest is in the deep drilling and the much greater volumes that could be achieved there. And I think the discussions we're having at the moment are in connection with drilling depths of between about 4,200 metres and 4,700 metres, where the outcome, if it's successful, will be dramatic. I think the interest in the shallower fields obviously is less, but it's our wish that we do start production from those shallower fields, because it would not take very much to make those cash producers. In terms of the status of the discussions, we are awaiting on a daily basis to get the final sign-off from the Kazakh government in terms of the commerciality of the deal, and that should come through certainly in days, not weeks. KNOC then have to apply for a fairly standard operating approval, but that's something they've had many times before, so we don't think that will take a great deal of difficulty in terms of them getting it, but it may be a month or so. I think the expectation is that we will be starting this deep drilling campaign probably October, November this year, but it really just depends on those regulatory permits coming through. In terms of the prospective resources there's a lot down there. It's not all in the same spot, so there are a number of prospects that we're going to drill. But I think the most important thing for us is that we are in the hands now of someone who's far better as an operator than we are, and is much better funded. So they can take this through this stage and beyond. We would not be in a position then of actually have to cast around for other funders, in the happy position that we're successful in the drilling in the next few months. In terms of the other assets, I'll just cover a couple that we've got. One is a very small asset, Moonai Lee. It is something that we have attempted to sell a couple of times, but for various reasons the transaction hasn't gone through. In the meantime, the people who have been operating that have got it to a position where it is ready to start production, which has been funded by some pre-sales. It's not going to be huge production. About 100 barrels a day is the expectation, but it is going to be at full prices, so that would be a useful contribution to run the costs of the PLC, if nothing else. In terms of bay bars, this was one that was part of the original package back in 2007. A year after we got it, the Kazakhstan army decided they would rather have it as a training ground, so that one has been in force majeure. We haven't really spent a great deal of cash on that. That one could well come out of force majeure at some point, and if it did, we would look to farm that project out. We would not look to be the operator, and we would look to do that with somebody else. Put together some numbers here just to give an indication of the change that has taken place in the company. I think when we started, the intention was that we would be a fully operational company. We had at one point well over 100 staff going back to the start. We probably had 5 offices, and we were spending quite heavily in developing what we thought was going to be an exciting exploration portfolio. Then the markets obviously changed, and it took us a while to change with that. But in terms of where we've come to now, I think if we go to the bottom, look at the number of staff there, we're actually down to a situation where, as non-operator, we're actually running this company going forward from this point on a very economical basis. Certainly in the past, I think we've had operating costs around about $7 million a year. On a like-for-like basis going forward, I'd certainly be very disappointed if it wasn't significantly less than half of that, and it could be a fair bit cheaper. I think we have decided on those things that we're good at, which is the identification of opportunities, negotiating them, getting them through the regulatory system. And I think we've also found the things we're less good at, which is being an operator and being a large funder of these projects. Not since the IPO have we actually tapped the equity markets for any cash. All the cash that we've got has either come in by way of loan from the management team or from farm-out partners, and I think that's the way we'll continue. I think to the extent that we have very large drilling successes, I think our intention would be to fund those from reserve-based lending rather than to come back to the markets for more cash. But I think this shows that the focus of the company has now moved, and hopefully we're going to reap the benefits of the investment that's been made over the last 5 years. Quick slide there on the management team. I think I was introduced before. I think the only other thing to add is since then I've become non-executive chairman of Lockhart Energy Group, which was formerly Rio Chem, which is in the bid period at the moment. Edmund Limerick, our non-executive director, is in the audience, so if anyone wanted to talk to him today, he would be happy to speak to him, and his details are there. In Kazakhstan, our chief executive is also our largest shareholder. He's a very successful businessman across a number of industries, but has been specialising in oil and gas for the last 10 years. And I think it's with his support that we've been able to bridge the gap financially that was left when Canaman's pulled out, and we then had to wait 18 months to get a new farm-out partner through the system. And as a result of that, we've converted some of the debt that he has advanced the company, 9.6 million last year. His shareholding, including the companies he's associated with, is about 55% now. And the loan he has advanced, the facility is 7.5 million. of which about 4 to 5 million has been drawn so far. Finally, on that slide, we have Mr. Jang, a very experienced Korean national operator who was a vice president with LGI, and he obviously is the key man in terms of the discussion with LGI and KNOC, and making sure that the joint ventures we have with them work to the best effect. Just at the bottom of that slide, I've noted Angus MacPhail there, who's written what I think is a very good note on the company. There are issues in terms of getting hold of it if you're a private investor, but if you could do that, then I think that would be worth reading. And I've helpfully put his phone number there if you want to give him a call. So in summary, it's certainly my view that the current valuation is more than underpinned by the production we have at Gallas. I don't think I've got any doubts about that. In addition to that, there's going to be a lot of excitement with the drilling we're doing with one of the best operators in the region in the next 6 months. It will spark lots of news flow. There'll be at least 3 deep wells, and we are very hopeful and confident that will lead to something. Importantly, we've got the cash in place and we have the licenses in place to take us through to next summer, and we are no longer the operator, so that risk is taken out of our control. Costs are under control, I've covered that. And there again, there's the strong news flow. So what happens next? I think hopefully the next announcement will be the award of the waiver from the Kazakh government. And after that, we would hope to put out the results for the 6 months to 31 June towards the end of this month. And I think we're targeting 25th September to do that.
Thank you, Clive. Are there any questions?
Since I last met you, you've clearly sorted the company out, and the first 2 projects that you've got are either producing or have got a partner who will do the funding of the exploration. My question is, where's the encore? What are you going to do next?
Well,
are you going to go and pick up more licenses in Kazakhstan?
I think if more licenses became available, then, and we could do that, we would look to do that. I certainly don't think this is the end of our ambitions, but I think we have recognised where our strengths are, so we will be looking to do that very soon in terms of the cash flow with joint venture partners, and I think the establishment of the 2 that we have certainly helps with that. I wouldn't underestimate the work that is involved both at Gallas and more importantly at B&G in terms of doing that, but certainly I think we have taken a different direction. I do think the future is much more certain now. I think it's definitely the case that we are in a far stronger position now than we have been in the past, mainly a result of the work that's gone on in the past and the fact that we've come through the inevitable delays. So, we look to the future with lots of confidence, and for the right project that we would certainly get involved, but with a partner, not looking to fund it ourselves.
Further questions? Amy?
Could you give us a little bit more detail about the deep drilling programme? How many wells are planned, the structures, and whether you have a rig available for that?
Yes, this is something that's ongoing with the discussions with KNOC, and I think to some extent it goes hand in hand with the timing of the regulatory approvals, because we had hoped that we would get that done before the summer break there, which meant we would have been drilling about now, so that does have an impact on rig availability. The plan that we agreed with KNOC was that we would drill 3 wells, 2 at 4,200 and another one about 3,000. The intention was that we would do it on a fixed price contract, so we would not be exposed to some of the issues that others operating in the territory have had. Now, clearly that is flexible to a point, because the rig availability really depends on when we can commit to one. I think, though, that we recognise that the strength of KNOC makes us a much more sensible partner to any rig provider than we would be on our own. But again, we can't really push the button on all of that until we do get the final sign-off from the authorities. But my guess would be October, November there. And as to rig availability, I'm not up to speed on that on a day-by-day basis.
Further questions? Just there.
Following on from that question, could you tell us who is going to do the drilling in Kazakhstan? Which company?
We haven't selected one yet. We're talking to several there, and I think for us, we are looking for someone to do it on a fixed price basis, and obviously some people are more interested in doing that than others. I think that we'd be using the skills of KNOC and our own contacts to try and get the appropriate person. But again, it's a bit chicken and egg until we can actually commit to a timetable. It's very difficult to sign anyone up for that. But I think, there are several there. So I don't think we will have an issue in finding a sensible person.
All right. Thank you, Clive.